What? People in
Yeah,
television are cheap? Chester.
that's so wild.
That's
What a
not, I don't believe you.
concept.
And what made you go to DC after St. Louis? What was the like, and well, we'll get into it actually.
Yeah,
Don't answer that yet.
I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to waste my answers. Come on.
Yeah, sorry. That was a test and you passed. Well done. Oh, hi. You're listening to Service from Hell, a podcast featuring people that are currently in customer service positions or the lucky ones that got out and all of the good, bad, and infinitely irritating things that go along with that work. I'm actor and writer Kate Gaffney, and I'm uniquely qualified to discuss this as I currently work, or I used to work, at a very busy and very popular comedy club in Los Angeles, and at least one of you listening right now has probably grabbed me and told me you were ready to order when I was running around like a crazy person. So, let's eat! I'd like to welcome our guest, Chester Lampkin from St. Louis, Missouri. What up, St. Louis? Chester is a certified meteorologist and card-carrying member of SAG-AFTRA, whoop whoop, who you can see on your televisions in the Washington, D.C. area most evenings. Yes, he does use one of those confusing clicker things and look over to the left and the right to see what's actually on the green screen behind him. It's insane, and it is a skill that makes me hyperventilate. He is described by his colleagues as an affable and enthusiastic broadcast meteorologist and communications professional. I better know Chester from going to college with him and then meeting up with him when he randomly moved to New Zealand for work around the time that I was backpacking all over the world. So, Chester, tell them, how did you get into meteorology? Do you actually have health insurance through our union? Do you have the perks? Why'd you leave New Zealand? Tell them.
Great questions there. So basically, I left New Zealand because me and my partner decided we wanted to be a little bit closer to family, and we're thankful that we did that. Otherwise, we probably would have stayed. It is honestly one of the most amazing places on earth. Totally unique. It is at least worth a visit. And if you can somehow live there, it is also completely worth it. It was great.
So did you seek out, okay, so we're going to actually, all right, the questions we're going to go backwards. So you're originally from St. Louis.
Yes.
And was your goal always, you were interested in the science of weather and kind of wanting to be in that world? Or what were the steps that got you to choose meteorology?
I mean, basically, I was a weather nerd since I was a small child. And for anyone who grew up in the Midwest or in the middle of the country, like you did too, growing up in the middle of the country, you know that the weather can be crazy. Mm-hmm. We can literally get blizzards and tornadoes within a couple of days of each other. And so I grew up with that. I mean, I was a huge weather nerd and still am, but I really was as a kid. And I really, really wanted to do that. I'm one of those few people where people tell the story about what did you want to be when you were a kid? And I actually get to live out that dream, which is both awesome and also at the same time frightening, because I'm like, how did I get here? And why am I still doing this? How fortunate am I guess, in a sense. Yeah, I wanted to do it as a kid. So among other things, I mean, every kid wants to be like 5,000 things. So, but
sure.
Yeah, ever since childhood, I wanted to be a meteorologist. And then I actually went to school. St. Louis University is one of two schools in the entire state of Missouri that actually has a meteorology program.
So your degree is actually in meteorology, correct?
Yes, I actually have a bachelor in science and meteorology. It's like I said, there's not a lot of schools that have the degree. There's some states where you can't even get that degree. You have to go out of state to get it. So I was fortunate that there was one in my hometown. So I got to stay home in St. Louis after high school and get my degree.
Fun little note about SLU and the sort of weather meteorology program. They have a lot of pilots that also go to SLU for their undergrad studies. And I needed a science class because it was senior year and I was under the wire and I was like, I'll take weather. That'll be easy. But I don't know if you may not know this, but there were two divisions of weather. And those of us that were science shitheads and didn't want to do anything about that took the weather that was like, that's a cumulus cloud. That's rain. Yep. Good job. Yep. It was like weather for second graders. And then there was the weather class that was for the pilots and for the meteorologists and for people that were actually interested and smart. And I got stuck in the weather class for the pilots and y'all, like the smart kids. And Chester, when I say that and psychology were the two hardest classes I took in 4 years, and I took Spanish in Spain, and the hardest class I took was weather. And I would tell people, and they're like, okay, is it raining? Is it snowing? You get an A. And I was like, no, there's like a million things you actually have to know. It's so annoying. And I missed, you know how you had that window where you could still drop a class and it was like, it wouldn't affect you?
Yeah.
missed the window by 2 days. And I was like, I'm riding this bitch out. And I slid into home with a freaking C by the skin of my teeth. And I was like, great. So mad respect to you, Chester, because that is actually an intensely difficult program. So can you give us just for the non-meteorology people, can you give us maybe just like something scientific that you learned in college that I don't know, something about weather that you're like, I have to use this, but I don't say this on TV. And this is an interesting, fun, random sciencey thing. I'm putting you on the spot with that question.
No, I could think of like one thing. And I mean, honestly, this aspect of meteorology, I don't use at all in my professional life, but it is something that is foundational to understanding meteorology. And there's this equation called the equation of state, which I don't even remember the entire elements of it. But basically, it's dealing with density, pressure, and a couple other things. And it's based on like one of the laws of thermodynamics. I mean, we had to derive these things in a class. In dynamic meteorology, it's called the physics of the atmosphere, basically. Physical and dynamic meteorology are two like physics-based courses in meteorology. And you have to take calculus in order to derive these equations. And I'm like, who came up with this? And we actually did learn who came up with this. And there's all these laws, Boyle's law and Charles' law and all these people. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, how did you even figure this out? Like, I mean, I just want to be able to talk about cold fronts and, why there are puffy cumulus clouds. So yeah, it kicks your ass, to say the least. It's a tough major.
I mean, it's insane. I think it's super understood. And I think people see like the Al Roker of the world and they're like, that guy's cool and like fun and likable. That's probably why he's a meteorologist, not knowing that it's not just being a front facing camera personality. Right. It's like, oh no, you actually have to know stuff. And that's intense. I didn't realize that there were so few meteorology schools in Missouri. Do you know, is that like a rare thing to study in the country? Do you know?
It is. There are only, I would say, a few thousand jobs available probably in the industry, like overall, like thousands, as opposed to some industries where there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions. So, but at the same time, and I remember reading this somewhere online. So, this is why I should stop freaking out all the time about how I got to where I am. It's one of the lowest, like as far as job fields, it's one of the few that has like extremely low unemployment. If you have a degree in meteorology, you're probably going to find a job in that field or something somewhat related to that if you have that degree. So it's almost like guaranteeing you're going to get a job. Like the unemployment for meteorologists during like the last recession, and don't quote me on this, but I think I saw this like on the BLS website or some website, government website. Like unemployment was like 4% for meteorologists during like the recession. It's just like it's not recession proof, but it's pretty darn close. Now I say that now, but like we are in a global pandemic that like has squashed all rules. So we really don't know what's going to happen with this industry, but people need their weather for whatever reason, whether it's military or TV or, construction projects, all this consulting meteorology. There's all kinds of stuff you could do with this degree, and not to mention like education and teaching and stuff like that.
It's so cool. I want to get further into sort of how your industry has changed with the pandemic in this section, but I do want to so you go to college for it. You also have your master's, correct?
Oh, almost.
Oh, I'm sorry. We'll edit this part out.
No, it's fine. No, I'm totally open to talking about it because there's hope. There's a glimmer of hope that I may finish it at one point. But I am one thing short of a master's in geography. Oh. That would be a thesis. Oh, probably the most important thing.
Oh, that makes me want to throw up on myself. Ew.
I know. Seriously, I'm with you. I'm God. Like, it's like I physically feel like weary and just like sick just thinking about like doing all that writing and research. But like that's what it's all about, right? So it's just like I'm definitely afraid of finishing it and also definitely afraid of not finishing it because I have like nightmares all the time about not finishing college. And I'm like, I know this has related to my thesis, but I just whatever.
Oh, it is what God, I can't. I mean, the problem is for me is like I don't know why the universe put me at SLU. SLU is this underrated. It is the hardest academic institution. Like it is so intensely difficult.
Yeah.
I had such a hard time in college, and I tell people from the Midwest are kind of like, oh gosh, yeah, SLU. Like I've had a couple people kind of understand that it was a hard school.
Yeah.
But really outside of the Midwest, people are like, oh, it was like some private Jesuit college. Okay, whatever. And I'm like,
yeah,
no, I wanted to quit every day for 4 years because it's so hard. And there were so many like science brained, pre-med, PT, like it just, I was a horse of a different color. I was at the wrong freaking school. And when I hear about, you guys going on to higher education and all of these, I'm just like, I don't know. My friends are doctors. That's weird. Like I make podcasts. I don't know. I don't fit in here. Anyway.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of with you. Because I'm in the broadcast world and this is what I wanted to do. And I'm like, I really shouldn't have gone to SLU for that. Like everyone who, it's like, that's not really what, like we didn't have there's no journalism program at St. Louis University. So I took 0 journalism classes basically, and I somehow ended up in TV news. Like what?
Okay. So I got to know that. So I got to know. Okay. So you graduate from SLU, you dabble in the master's world. We're going to ignore that for a minute. What got you, like, what even put in your brain that you should go audition for a television, like sort of journal, like what, how? That's
a good, okay. I think I missed half your question. You said, because like you got cut off. What even put in your brain, and then your signal went out.
So sorry. This is the first time I've had this issue. I'm sorry. I'll edit all this stuff out.
Is that what you usually? Annoying. Is this the room you usually record?
This is always where I'm at. Yeah. I don't know. It's so sense. Yeah. Thank you for being patient. I'm so sorry. This never happened before.
Honestly, it doesn't bother me at all.
Well, you're very sweet.
I'm on vacation, Kate. It's all G.
Oh, I forgot. That's right. I got you in a good zone. That's good.
Yeah, honestly, like I'm not saying I'm totally relaxed, but I haven't been stressed about work in a week. So whatever.
Ooh. Okay, good. All right. So we were at, okay. So you go to SLU, you get this meteorology degree, thesis stuff, whatever later. So what put into your head, because I don't think I would have even thought, television meteorology was an option. Like I just wouldn't have, what drew you to, I guess it's a two-parter. What drew you to the TV side of it as opposed to teaching? And then how did you get your foot in the door? Cause you were on TV like basically right away.
Yeah, just a couple months after college.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, I know. It was a different time. Like for the youngins who are listening to the podcast, I'm sure you have a huge demographic of like 20-year-olds or whatever. Yeah. This is pre-pandemic, pre-Great Recession.
Yeah.
I did a couple, I admit to this, I did a couple victory laps, did senior year 3 times. I just loved it so much. I just love going into debt, just picking up those student loans.
Woo, who doesn't? But right? It's good.
But I still finished it, a little bit behind schedule. But the point was that it was before 2008, it was before the Great Recession.
Sure.
So getting a job was a lot easier than it is, I would say, now, or even like when times were good before the current recession. It was just so much easier to get work then. And so I guess let's go with why I wanted to do this in the first place. Like I said, I grew up kind of wanting to be in this business. Like I was that kid. And I think a lot of people in your podcasts, a lot of your guests, because, I've listened to a few episodes. I think a lot of your guests will probably have the same sort of story. Like as a kid, I pretended I was on the radio. I pretended, to be a TV news broadcaster and weather forecaster, like I was pretending to do these things. I may not have been in theater because I was too shy. Like I was so different than the Chester you met, the Chester you met in college, not shy,
not even a little bit,
not even close.
No.
And like the Chester from elementary through high school was, like I was afraid to even talk to the mirror, like I was just so,
bless you.
I was such a shy kid. Yeah. It was just like a different life, but I did at least have that ambition. I was always interested in weather. So I would watch the Weather Channel, which my brother hated because we shared a bedroom, and I would put the Weather Channel on all the time. I'd rather watch that than cartoons. I know. I got my fill of Animaniacs. Don't get me wrong, but like still, like, I watch the Weather Channel all the time. I would watch the local news, and to this day, I still am a local news junkie. A lot of people, they get their news from the internet now, and I like totally will. We were on vacation not that long ago, me and the family, and I watched the local CBS station when I was in town because even though I have no connection to that place, I was like, I just want to check out the news,
That's so sweet.
as a kid, I wanted to do those things. I wanted to be a broadcaster. I remember listening to some, I grew up on a lot of hip hop and R&B music. I listen to a lot of things now, but like the hip hop and R&B station was back in St. Louis. It was like Magic 108. And it was like the big powerhouse, black music station. And I would pretend that I was my own radio DJ. And I even had like tape recorders and like would record things and like record myself. I mean, I wish I could hear them now. They probably are just.
Me too.
They're probably the worst things. It's like that. I don't know. I just think of like Arrested Development where they have George Michael playing, with the Star Wars,
and the mannequin
thing.
And he's hitting them and beating them. They always go back to that video. Crying. Yes. I love that show.
Yeah, they would cut back to. I love that. That would have been me on my little tapes that I've recorded at home. Like
Bless you.
That version of that. So yeah, that's what I wanted to do as a kid. But being a weather, like a meteorologist, was like high on the list. So that interest existed from elementary school all the way through high school. And then when I got to college, I'm like, I'm declaring my major as meteorology. Like, wasn't even close, I just knew I was going to. And then, Lord help me, Kate, I took chemistry and physics. I like that. More of these sounds. Calculus 1, 2, 3, differential equation, math I had even heard of.
Chester, no. This is how you ruin your life in college. This is why college sucked. Me too.
I know. I mean, and you know what? I actually really had a great college experience, except for the part where it kicked my ass all the time.
Same.
You
just feel defeated constantly, and like you're surrounded by all these other people that seem to get it, and you're like, why don't I fucking get it? Because it's so fucking hard.
It was so hard, and I was, some of the classes I was in, Kate, like. These people are like, I have, a couple friends I have friends who work for Google.
Come on.
And like, I have friends who work at Boeing and all these, they're doing all these interesting, smart people things.
Barf.
And I like when people say, I'll take it as a compliment if someone thinks I'm a smart person, but I'm not really a smart person. Like, these are the smart people,
But Chester, the classes you just described, I can't spell the names of. Like, don't.
Well, I'm not sure.
Like, don't get it twisted too hard. Like, maybe we can't rock with all of our fucking doctor friends. Fuck them. I hope they're listening. Yeah. But like, you're taking some legitimately challenging classes. I mean, chemistry alone, I will walk out into traffic before I ever have to look at any of that bullshit again.
I couldn't, and honestly, I couldn't believe that I even had to take. I was actually very lucky. I only had to take one semester of it, but that was enough.
Bye.
That was enough.
Bye. Yeah. Okay, so you transitioned to. Did you just decide freshman year you were no longer going to be shy, or it's like you met Adam and the two of you were like, we're going to be crazy, and that's fine.
I mean. I don't know what it is. Like that summer, I think I just kind of grew up, I guess, the summer after high school going into college. And I just decided that I was just going to become a little bit louder. And, I think my freshman year was, kind of like I was actually pretty chill at the time. And this is before I would have met you and any of the other.
Yeah, because we weren't there yet.
Blue folks. Yeah, you guys weren't there yet. I was still commuting. I was commuting to college. I hadn't lived on campus yet. And I had a group of friends, and some of them I'm still friends with to this day. We're not as close as we used to be because we all have lives and careers, et cetera. But I still keep in contact with a lot of that main group of folks. But just being around, making new friends, making a bigger group of friends. I never had a huge group of friends in high school. I wasn't that kid, I think that was my transition year, really. It wasn't just like a boom, abrupt change, but it certainly was a change from like going from high school to like where I was afraid to talk to anybody, who I didn't already know, which amazes me how I even made friends because I was afraid to talk to everyone. Sure. And then becoming this person who, I was an RA, I was involved in student organizations. Like, I had, I would go to parties. I actually had parties. I had, even though I was never big in the fraternity and sorority scene, I did go to a couple fraternity parties. Like I kind of dabbled in everything in a sense, in college. But as you do, you grow up, and
sure.
I don't know how this all came together, but now, it's for me, I'm using those skills. Actually, they end up being skills.
Sure they do. Yeah. And meeting strangers from all across the world that are coming to school there. So you graduate and then a couple months later you're on TV, but what was why did you say, okay, I'm choosing television meteorology as opposed to classroom meteorology? What especially for someone shy? What was the?
Yeah. Well, I honestly, I didn't think I hadn't really considered, but I don't think I would have had the grades to get into grad school is what I thought, and honestly, like my grades weren't great, like I had an average GPA, all that stuff, all that crap, whatever. And so like that never really crossed my mind. The TV thing was, I kind of hemmed and hawed on it a little bit, because I wanted to do it. I was super excited. And then like the meteorology kicked my butt, and I had to take, there was an actual class where I actually flunked. It wasn't meteorology. It was calculus 3. I actually got an F, a big fat F.
But you're, I would have gotten a Q. What the fuck is that? How do you like, that's insane.
I know. I mean, I don't know how anyone even, I don't even know how I passed.
Yeah. I don't know how
I retook it. I didn't give up. I retook it. And I passed. But I don't know how. Like, I still like, I feel like there was a part of me that like somehow has been destroyed, by taking those classes. But it was like a magic portion of my body. It was like I had an out of body experience, and like it just took the class, and then it just like sacrificed itself for me.
Listen, SLU stole my soul too. I mean, I get it. Like you, no, I was, oof. I can't even.
And we talk, and I'm talking about the science and math classes.
Yeah.
Like some of the non-science and math classes were really hard for me too. Like,
Same.
And a lot of folks don't know this, and because it just, to me, I don't really bring it up because there's no point. But I actually have a degree in history too.
Jesus.
So I know. I have 2 bachelor's degrees. Because I was there for so long. I was like, I'm going to come out 6 years with degrees. 1 degree. I should have 2. I should at least have 2, right, Kate? So I started taking history classes, and my microphone I'm talking to you on now is propped up by one of them. It's the Palestine and the Arab-Israeli conflict book that I took in the Christians. I know in one of my Middle East courses in history.
Oh, I'm losing listeners as this goes on and on. Talk like, more nerdy to me.
It's like, this is the nerdiest episode. This podcast is cool. It was full of cool, interesting people, and then there's
now I can interviewed a scientist. Okay.
Well, back in my day, I had a degree.
He's pushing up his non-existent glasses. Okay. Yeah, so you get a dual degree, but for fuck's sake, how did you get to the TV? Like, the transition is crazy to it. Because were they coming to colleges looking for people to fill a meteorology spot? Like, because that's not necessarily a job that becomes open. I mean, you were on the network in St. Louis. So how did that happen?
Well, it actually took a few years to get to St. Louis. It really did. I had to leave St. Louis.
Oh, did you do meteorology elsewhere first?
Yeah, I toiled around in smaller television markets for several years, actually, before I made it back to St. Louis. And some people, they do make it to bigger, St. Louis is not as big of, for those who don't know, the nation is divided up by media markets, So
sure.
If you live in LA, your CBS is not going to be the same as the CBS you see in Las Vegas or St. Louis or Charlottesville, Virginia, or wherever you are, And but the point is that you want to try to work your way up through the market system. So I went to the bustling metropolis of Grand Junction, Colorado.
I forgot about this. Oh,
Yes.
Okay. See, I'm a terrible interviewer. I should have remembered all this. And then, and you met your partner.
It's hard to remember all of it.
But you met your partner in one of the tours of the smaller markets, right?
Well, in St. Louis. We met in St. Louis.
But she's from Texas.
She's from Texas.
This is
right.
I'm
originally
derailing.
from Mexico through Texas. Anyway.
Got it. Okay. So sorry, go back. So you go to Grand Junction, Colorado, the bustling metropolis.
Colorado.
Okay.
Right. Okay. First off, okay. I'm gonna say positive things about Grand Junction. Okay.
Tune in,
Before
Colorado
I get
listeners.
to the other stuff.
We do have listeners in Colorado. We do actually. So
those western slope Colorado listeners, heads up. Okay. Grand Junction. Okay. You've probably been there.
Possibly.
It is a city.
Okay.
It is a city. It has an airport, and an Amtrak station, wherever.
That's huge.
It really is. It's huge, yeah. It really is a beautiful place. It is probably one of the most beautiful places in the country. Not necessarily Grand Junction itself, but like the western slope of Colorado. Like, it's just a beautiful place, okay? People are nice, okay? Kate, I'm not even kidding, okay? I would go weeks, sometimes a month or 2 without seeing a minority. Like, it is
tough.
It's not diverse.
No, that's tough.
It's not.
Yeah.
It was just very, it was a little, for the listeners who none of them know me anyway, maybe one or two might.
We have listeners in DC, Chester. This podcast is enormously successful.
It's universal. It's universal.
We actually do. Everywhere. We are everywhere. Fuck you.
Yeah.
Keep going, Chester. So for the listeners who don't watch the weather in DC, go ahead.
Yeah, who don't watch the weather. Like I said, you probably don't know who I am because I work for the CBS affiliate, WUSA 9. Check us out. No, I'm half black. I'm half Asian. Okay. And you saw none of that in Grand Junction.
Zero.
I mean, there was a and much larger now, I think, today than it was in 2005 when I got out there, a large and growing Hispanic population. But I never lived in a place like that. St. Louis doesn't have much of a Hispanic population.
Sure.
It's relatively diverse. It's not as diverse as the coastal cities or Chicago, but it's relatively diverse.
There's a very large African American population in St.
Exactly.
Louis.
Yeah, I grew up in a black neighborhood. Half my family is black. Everyone in the St. Louis side of the family, that's all the black side of the family for me. And so, like, having gone from a place where I went to, a majority white school, but lived in a majority black neighborhood. This is high school, middle school, and college. And then I went to a place where there was basically no diversity. Like, when you think of a place with no diversity, Grand Junction is almost that. It was back then. It was a little shocking, to say the least. Yeah. A little shocking.
Well, that'd be tough to adjust because you're like, where do I fit in?
Right. And as you know this, and I know you have a lot of folks who have been on the show, and you know this personally. And when you first start out in a business, especially in a business that involves television or radio or anything of this nature, you get paid nothing.
Zero. So peanuts.
I will gladly tell you what my first salary was. This is 2005. Okay. I worked in television weather. I was a meteorologist on television, and I was making $18,500.
You can't live on that. Salary. You couldn't live on that then. You can't live on that now. Nope. That is, were you union at that point? Were you already in SAG?
No, I wasn't. Yeah. So and that's the other thing. A lot of these smaller TV markets, they aren't unionized. There's no union, and I know there's always these arguments about pros and cons. I'm very thankful for our union.
Same.
I am very happy to be in SAG-AFTRA. Originally, when I got into the union, it was just AFTRA, and then we merged with SAG. I think the two unions are better together.
I agree.
And I'm so thankful that they have the benefits that they do have. And but it was I didn't work in that. I didn't get into that unionized part of the world until later in my career when I got back to St. Louis.
And for
before that, you get paid nothing.
Yeah. For the non sort of entertainment people, if you haven't listened to other episodes, we sort of go into the ins and outs of union, but essentially we're strictly talking salary. The unions go in, or the SAG-AFTRA goes in and negotiates what a base rate would be for, film and television. But in this case, television, okay, a meteorologist on a network of this size airing this many nights or days a week gets X. And then your agents or managers can negotiate, I guess, higher based on, like, I'm sure Al Roker makes a shitload more than most meteorologists because he's a personality now. Yeah. But so for background for the listener. Okay. So you're working in Grand Junction. There's no diversity. You're not really seeing anybody you can relate to. Was it lonely? That would have been hard.
It was. And I had some good roommates who also worked at the TV station. It's almost like an extension of college in a sense that like you're all a bunch of 20 somethings. You just got out of college. For everyone, it was either the first or second job. And so we're living like crap, and we're going out and partying all the time, and having a little too much booze occasionally, things like that.
You're on your own. I never did that.
No,
Chester.
not once, ever.
Not once.
That's not a thing.
No,
not a thing.
No. Especially not at SLU to survive every day.
Yeah.
It was awful.
Yeah, exactly. Medicate a little. So
you're in that small market. How long? So you said you trotted around there for what? Like, were you on there? Well, how did you, again, okay, so I have to know, why did you apply though for TV as opposed to teaching? Yeah. Like, what made, why TV?
Yeah. First off, I kind of hinted it earlier about not going into higher education or whatever teaching, because you have to go to higher education, really master's, PhD level, mostly PhD level, to go do research or to teach.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I could have taught, I could have gone into the teaching world, which there are some times where I kind of wish, I was in that world just because, I want the summers off. But then I see what teachers are going through now and I'm like, oh my God, for the love.
No, thanks.
No, yeah, I'll pass for now.
Yeah.
But I think you have to get that extra education. And I just didn't want to do that. I'm very much having worked in we'll talk about this a little bit later, worked in the customer service world and talking to people, I gotten used to that. And so like today I do serve a customer. I do sort of a customer service job, but in a different way.
Absolutely. 100%.
It's certainly not exactly the same as McDonald's, which I have stories about too, but like certain, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you're like, I'm not doing the higher education thing. So then you were like, all right, well, I'm going to shoot for TV. Did someone then say to you, okay, well, you're non-union, so look in the non-union markets, and then you just looked on job posting services, or did you have a professor that was like, oh, Grand Junction, Colorado, good place for starting out or whatever? Like, what was your guidance to Colorado?
So I had a teacher at St. Louis University who actually I ended up working with in St. Louis for several years. He was a broadcast meteorologist as well. Yeah. And so he taught the broadcast course at SLU at St. Louis University. And he helped me and another buddy of mine who's also still in TV weather like me get into the business. He said, this is what you do. We put together a resume tape. There's a certain format for that for local news. And it literally was a tape back then. And so I would send out resumes and tapes to these small market television station jobs. I actually I think I was going to go interview at some small market in, my goodness, what state was that? I almost want to say it was Tennessee. Like it was a super small television market in Tennessee. And like, I got hits from all these small market, but you don't go to you don't get to go. You're not allowed to go to like the Chicagos of the world or the St. Louis or even places like Oklahoma City, which you think that's not that big of a city. It's actually too big of a city for someone fresh out of college.
But also if their budget is $18,500 for someone, anyone who has any level of experience is like, I'm not going to also have to get food stamps to do my fucking job. They're going to be
which so many people do.
Yes, which is insane. I know a lot of people who, that's a separate economic issue for artists that I could go off about, but that's not what this is. Okay, so you screw around in Grand Junction for a while, you get some experience, then you go down to New Mexico, Texas. Where did you go next?
Not quite. Yeah, no, I go to another small market. The short story of it is Grand Junction was awesome, but like it was just too far away. It was just I was making no money, and
nobody looked like you.
Yeah, and I was just driving this beat up old Nissan Sentra that didn't have the heat didn't work, and I was living in Colorado in the wintertime.
Nope.
So like just like things like that. There was actually a stretch where I didn't even have a car. I would bike to work. Like it was that bad, And so like I just like I got to get out of this. So I was able to secure a job closer to home, Columbia Jefferson City market, which is like where the University of Missouri is, and Jefferson City is the capital of Missouri for anyone who isn't familiar. So, I got there, but even there, the job didn't pay that much more. It was only a few thousand more. So I had to get a part-time job. So I was working part-time. Yeah, can you believe this? I was full-time weekday morning meteorologist at a local TV station in that market, and I was working part-time at JCPenney.
No, Chester.
Yes.
That's how do you have the energy to be on TV camera ready 5 mornings? Because you were doing mornings, right? That was mostly.
And I was coming in at like 3 a.m. I would come into work at 3 a.m.
And would you ever pull up? Well, we're going to get into this, but would you work at JCPenney the night before sometimes and then go to work at 3 in the next?
So that often, most of the time I worked at JCPenney on the weekends, but sometimes I would work during the week too. I would like work I would do morning news, morning and and sometimes the noon news. But I know you should.
This makes me so mad. This makes me so mad because you're an artist.
Terrible.
Like,
it's terrible.
Yes, you identify as a meteorologist, but like you're on TV. I'm not saying that has more value than something else, but like there is an expectation of a certain level of energy and a certain, you can't look like you went out and worked the night before. You need to be pretty at 3:30 in the morning or whatever. And to not pay them. This is why a union has to exist, because if they could get away with it, they would pay $18.5 in perpetuity to everybody.
And I feel like now the starting wages for these jobs are still in the 20s, which is, if you adjust for inflation, that is still
not livable.
Not even close. And you have a 4-year degree. These people have 4-year degrees.
And student loans.
Right. And you have to wonder, and this is one of those things, and there's a whole economic situation. Like I said, we can go into the economics of this. Basically, it prevents people who don't have the economic means from getting into this job industry.
Correct.
And that is unfair.
Correct.
That is unfair. You are missing out on diversity, on talented people.
Yep.
On people who cannot do it because they literally cannot afford to live off of terrible wages after they've gone to college and, gone into debt $10, $20, $50, $100,000.
Oh, it makes me say, like, everyone thinks it's cute that it's like, oh my gosh, Tiffany Haddish lived in her car. Like, isn't that cute? Like, Kevin Hart had to like pay for a hotel room for it. That's disgusting. That's not awful. Cute. That's not a good look for anybody. Anyway, separate issue. I'm getting mad.
Agreed.
So let's get, so because we're still in the intro, this is a problem when I interview people I know really well. It goes on and on and on. I don't want to waste all of your time.
Well, from now on, I'm just going to say all my answers are going to be 3 words. That's it. Just 3. Yes, no, maybe.
Great. This is going to get even nerdier. Can't wait. Okay. So you're bouncing around to small markets. You eventually come back to St. Louis. What took you to New Zealand? Why go international?
Okay. All right. So I'll get to this. Let's move to the St. Louis thing. Okay. First off, I got to St. Louis. It's my hometown. Okay. So for those who are listening, who are from St. Louis or have been to St. Louis, it's a nice place. It has its pluses and minuses as well, but I really have nothing but love for STL.
I love St. Louis too. I do too.
Yeah. It's just a great place. And I'm not sure if I'll ever live there again, but it is like my heart warms when I see like someone wearing like a Cardinals hat, or if I see someone reference gooey butter cake or, anything that's St. Louis related. I'm like, I'm from St. Louis. We do.
Yeah.
It's terrible. I'm like a huge fool.
No, you're not. Ted Drewes is really good. Like, there's good things in St. Louis. It's so fun. Nelly's from there. I love him.
Yeah. So we got some good things. We got some good things in STL. But
you go back to St. Louis, so you start working there.
I finally get there. I finally made it back. It took me 6 years? It's 2011 at this point when I moved back to St. Louis. I almost didn't take the job, to be honest with you. I'll just say that I at the time I was actually the chief meteorologist at that same CBS station in mid-Missouri. Okay. I had left and come back from there. I have a tendency to leave and come back from jobs. Okay. So I worked there once. I left in Texas. I lived in El Paso for 3 years, moved back there. Then I came to St. Louis. I was the chief. I was the prime time guy. It's a small TV market. You think, oh, that's not great. I was making better money. I wasn't rolling, but I was making better money. I was a sink at the time, single income, no kids, So like, it was just like, it worked, it worked for me. I was in grad school. It worked for me. And then I moved to St. Louis and quit grad school essentially after a short amount of time.
Because theses blow.
Because I was like, oh God, okay, I can't do this all. And I was working the weekend mornings, so it was
too much.
It was another tough schedule. It was another tough schedule where I was getting up early. It wasn't as bad. I was getting up at like 4 a.m. on Saturday and Sunday mornings, but I was still relatively younger than I am now, and so like. And all my friends were there. Like, I went to college here, so I wanted to go out with my friends. I couldn't do that stuff, Everyone would be like, it's Friday night. I'm like, I'm going to bed. Yay.
Good night at 6 p.m. Bye-bye.
Yeah, see ya. Oh, the sun's still up. Who cares? Going to sleep anyway. Things like that. It's just terrible. So I think I got tired of the schedule, working the weekends, which ironically is what I do now. But like I was working weekend mornings. I got tired of the schedule. And I was just like, when I applied for the job in New Zealand, and I remember seeing the job posting online. It was random. I didn't even know anyone down there. I just said, yeah, I think I'd live there. I had never been to New Zealand, but they needed a meteorologist. They needed specifically a media meteorologist for what they what the New Zealand Met Service is what they're called, the New Zealand Met Service, which is essentially the National Weather Service of New Zealand. So I worked for them. And I mean, I couldn't believe I got the job, to be honest with you. Looking back, it makes sense now. They don't have a single, well, they do now, but when I started there, they didn't have a university that offered a degree in meteorology in the entire country of New Zealand.
Were all of their people coming from international schools then?
A lot of people would come from abroad. So I worked with a diverse group of people. There was a meteorologist from Iceland. There were people from, Japan, China, a lot of South African meteorologists, a lot of people from the UK. I worked with a guy who was from the Netherlands. Like, there were people from all over the world. It was amazing. And so that was really cool. So all the Kiwis, all the local folks, the New Zealanders, they refer to themselves as Kiwis because of the infamous or famous. I shouldn't say infamous. Like, they're not like killer birds. The Kiwi birds.
But they can't fly, so it's kind of cool.
They can't fly. So yeah, they're cool actually. They're the
and we almost ran over one at King Arthur's Pass or King whatever Arthur's Pass.
Those poor birds. I'm so glad we don't. Yeah,
we didn't hit them.
We didn't hit any birds. No animals were
harmed
hurt
in the traveling to New Zealand.
No, exactly. None that I know of, at least.
We'll see.
But a lot of the Kiwis, they have to get their degree from abroad, or there was one university that would offer like a master's in meteorology once every like 2 or 3 years or something like that. And like they had to recruit people from abroad to get these jobs filled. And so yeah. That's how I got the job. Like, they needed someone who worked in media. They were doing something with a media software called Weatherscape that big companies were using, like BBC and most of the Australian broadcasters used that weather software. And so this little company in New Zealand, the National Weather Service of New Zealand, needed a meteorologist. And so
you're like, I got
the
this.
job.
Oh, I love that.
So
and then now you're in DC. And what made you pick DC? Because you moved back to St. Louis for a minute.
Back to St. Louis, yeah.
And then was that the same news channel you had worked for before?
Yep. Yeah, I worked for the same company. I came back to the same company. They lured me back, and I'm glad I did it. It was tough leaving New Zealand because it was such an amazing place, and I did make some good friends down there. So that was awesome. It's an experience I would never trade in for the world. I had a few visitors, present company included.
That's
Kate
right.
Came to visit. It was amazing after her Southeast Asia traveling. And then I had a couple other friends, and my best friend Adam Dulesky, who Kate,
Hi, Adam.
He came down with his wife, and it was just awesome. And then my son was born while I was in New Zealand, so my partner, she came down with him. And so they got to live the Kiwi life for about 10 months before we moved back to the States.
So cool. So cool.
Yeah, and he'll never remember it. He was a baby.
I wanted him to get an accent. I'm so bummed that he wasn't there long enough. The coolest.
If we would have stayed, he certainly would have one. I mean, that accent is thick.
It's so good.
Kiwi accent. It is. So good. It is. It's a good accent.
So you go back to
just don't call them Australians. Don't call the Kiwis Australians.
Oh my God, don't.
That's a thing. It's a thing. I work with a guy who's from Australia. Now he's an Australian working here in my TV station in DC here, and he's like, the people keep saying stuff to me about New Zealand, and he doesn't. He's
mad.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't like that.
Okay, so now you're in DC. You're doing weekend weather.
Yes.
And so I want to get kind of briefly. Has the pandemic changed your ability to do your job? Are you doing, weather reports from home? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, it is. It's so weird. We live in a weird time, and I am very thankful that I get to do this job at home because there's so many of us out here, especially in the entertainment industry, who either can't do their jobs at all or because of the pandemic, so many things were delayed for months and months and months before they could find a way to do their work safely. I'm thinking about like a lot of the TV shows that have gone back to, finally filming and stuff like that. I only hear about that stuff a little bit because, the news media world is in a little bit different. It's a different place than the world that you've lived in, Kate, for the last several years. Like, I can't imagine like how comedians make a living. When all you do is stand up and you travel and you you go to shows and now you can't talk to anyone, or how musicians that are especially the ones that are struggling, not the ones who've made it. The ones who've made it probably need to pay the bills too, but the ones who are struggling, trying to make a name for themselves, or were just barely making enough, or maybe not even that. How do they live? Because like for me, the news goes on. Like we don't have the viewership now than we did in the 90s when there was no such thing as the internet, but people still come to us when there are big events, especially big weather events. Like we had a tropical storm come through here earlier this summer, and ratings were great because of that, because people were coming to watch the broadcast or go on our website or look at our social media profiles to see weather information, for example. So when there's big stories, people still do come to local media to check that out. So our job still exists, and our job can soldier on, because a lot of us can do our job out of the office now. Like I've been to the office probably 4 or 5 times as of this recording since March, and I don't know when I'll go back permanently. Some of my coworkers have. Most of them have not.
Is it up to you? Do you get to decide when you go back? Have you said your level of comfort? Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's generally for me, and this is true of all of our meteorologists. We'll go in if there's a big weather event. So if we were to have, say, a nor'easter, DC is known for the nor'easters. I mean, not as much as Boston, New York, but
the fuck's a nor'easter? Talk to us talk stupid to us, please.
Oh yeah, you're right. I forget you West Coasters, you don't know anything about that. It's like your weather is basically sunshine or fire. Like those are the two. And I shouldn't joke about that because all the fire. I mean, I don't mean that in a bad way, but like California literally is on fire. Climate change is real. Let's get that out there. Okay. Just put it out.
Wait,
there, okay?
It's from a meteorologist. Climate change is real. Here we go.
I'm just saying. I actually took a climate change class. I'm not saying I'm an expert, but I actually took a class.
And also we're living in this world, breathing this air.
Yeah,
anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. We see it all the time.
Okay.
Right. So anyway, the point of the story is that a nor'easter, for those who are from the East Coast, you know about them. Okay, you're familiar with them. They are massive storms that they kind of spin up once they get to the coast here. They draw in just a ton of relatively warm water from the Atlantic Ocean, and then they just like throw all this heavy rain and snow onto the land. And they are beasts. Sometimes they could be as strong as hurricanes. And some of the most famous storms on the East Coast are nor'easters, ones that'll shut down DC or New York or Boston or any of those big, Philly or all those big East Coast cities for days, sometimes with snow. Like the government has shut down because of snowstorms here.
Wow.
Because they'll get 2-3 feet of snow in the area, which to me is just like, I've never seen that much snow except for like in the mountains,
Sure.
And we haven't had a nor'easter since I've been here, but I know they happen. Do you remember, what was that movie? I think it was called The Perfect Storm, with Clooney in it. Do you remember? It was like from the 90s.
I don't remember.
Anyway, for anyone who's seen this, I think it's called The Perfect Storm or Perfect Storm or something like that. Clooney's in it. I almost want to say Mark Wahlberg or someone. There's some other people in it.
Sounds like a good movie. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I just remember Clooney's in it. And so like I'm saying Clooney like I'm like I know him or whatever. George Clooney's in the movie. Some other famous people or whatever. And this was based on a nor'easter that like tore through the East Coast. So it was like a crazy big storm. So we get these big storms up here that like they literally will like dump feet of snow on some of the biggest American cities and just shut the entire I-95 corridor down. All the big cities on the East Coast will shut down because of that.
So when that happens, the ratings go up, and so then you would go in.
We get called into work.
Okay,
right.
So now in the current situation, though, you said some of your colleagues have gone back, but you have not. Is it like, has your boss said to you, hey, it'd be great if you came back to the studio, or has your boss just said, well, you're set up to do it at home and everybody knows everybody's doing it at home, so it doesn't matter?
Sure. Well, I think, and I don't want to speak for management because I don't really know what they feel or think about it, but from what has happened at my shop here is basically my company is taking a very cautious approach to who they're bringing in the building. And so basically, if you don't need to be there, you don't go. That's just the way it is.
That's smart.
And they've extended our work from home orders into the new year. So that is, and that's common.
Yeah, it is.
From what I've heard of a lot of people, but like
I know people that work for the DOJ, and that's kind of, I mean, they're doing court appearances from Zoom in their homes
virtually, right? Yeah, exactly. So that's the world we live in. DC, a majority of workers who are still employed are working remotely. And that has really changed the way this city functions.
Sure.
It really has.
Yeah, I would say the vibe and energy of, traffic or, all the businesses really that love that lunch traffic or survive off of that lunch traffic, those are the ones that it's killing them. Yeah.
Yeah. And I hate that,
I do too.
I can't imagine, because like, I feel like if you were a business owner, that's like, it's almost like, it's like second to having a child, I would say. Because I mean, I have the experience of having a child, but I don't have the experience of having like a business. But I think that would be almost like the next step, as far as like, this is my baby, and then you are also providing jobs for others. And these businesses, local businesses are hurting. Like, as of like when we recorded this podcast, and I'm sure there'll be more, there was this prominent group of DC small restaurants that's owned by a couple guys. They own 7 different restaurants. They're closing all of them.
Oh my God.
And that sort of thing is happening right here in the belly of the beast, where, with the political environment that we're in right now, like you would think that our leaders would see this stuff is happening in our backyard. But, again, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Ugh. Well, it's interesting. I'm glad that that your station is taking it seriously and being cautious. Yeah, you're very fortunate. And I mean, that's just, I don't know. Anyway, well, folks, that was the intro because I know Chester super well and wanted you guys to get to know him very well. And that was your apps. So we hope you enjoyed them. We are going to go on to the entrees after a quick break. Well, folks, we've done it again. We talked way too long for only one episode. Tune in next week for part 2 of Chester Lampkin.